For joining me on another one of my Instagram lives. Tuesdays, 7:30, half an hour. And if you're watching on a replay, I think you're going to get a lot of interesting stuff out of this. Hopefully you're going to see some people joining shortly. So today we're going to be talking all about budgeting. Now, I think this is a subject which really does, I think, perplex a lot of people. Hello, Afro Girl Adventures, that's and Bouncy Castle. Bouncy Feet Castle Hire. All right, okay. Mabel's Gold. Yes, hello. Another regular adventure. I'm trying to read these. I've got new glasses and I really need better eyes to see through them. Nice to see you. Had a really interesting live last night with Mr. Money Jar. Mr. Money Jar, where we talked all about property and investing. If anyone was there last night, give us a hands up or a thumbs up, just so we know that you're following us around. And last week's live that I did got quite a lot of interesting questions in that. And if you remember, hi Mabel's Gold, and I actually asked you a question, didn't I? I asked you if you would go and do something. I asked you if you would actually go away and either write, email, text, or call someone and tell them what you appreciated about them, what you were grateful for about them, what you liked about them, or what you admired about them. So I wonder if any of you actually did that. So if you didn't hear my live last week, you can still do that. Just ring, text, or write to someone about that. Good. All right. Let's talk about budgeting. And I think the whole thing about budgeting, it fills people with a kind of like, unless you're an accountant, any accountants out there? Don't worry, I'm not here to knock accountants. I think the problem with budgeting is that people misunderestimate how essential it is to getting ahead. If you listen to my Real Money Stories podcast with Rob Moore is a multi-millionaire. I don't know what he's worth. He makes between £1 and £5 million a year. The guy's a walking legend. He's only 42. But even he, in that interview with me, admitted that you need to have some form of budget. You need to, hi Tabo, you need to have some kind of idea of where your money is going, and also a plan for where you want it to go. Right. So it's all very well doing side hustles and investing and making money and improving your career and all that stuff. But if you cannot plug the gaps, if you don't know where the money's going, you are never going to build wealth. If I'd have learnt this, I said this to someone in a live that I did today, a live webinar I did today. In fact, yesterday I did one today as well. If I'd learned this skill in my early 20s, I would have double the current wealth that I currently have, and I'm okay. So you can imagine how much that has cost me in my early years. The good news is that many of you will have plenty of time ahead of you, and if you listen to what I'm going to say now and you take it on board, you can do well. And this is not a lecture, this is just some insights, right? So what do we mean by budgeting? As I say, it's really this process of having some sense of where your money is going. And why is it essential? Well, it's essential because if you don't control where your money's going, it doesn't matter how much you earn. Let me say this again. It doesn't matter how much you earn if you can't control your spending. You are never going to get ahead. Well, you might get ahead. You could be a partner at a big accountancy firm who earns £1 million a year and somehow, just because they cannot spend all the money, somehow accumulate some money. Right? There are some people like that. But even Rihanna, with all the millions that she's made over the years, she nearly ran out of money some years ago because she bought some big house that she didn't realise it needed repairs, and she had all this entourage following her around. And if any of you remember Elvis, from obviously an iconic person, he was penniless when he died, even though he'd earned millions through his life. And you see this with American football players, you see it with UK soccer players. So, it's not about what you earn, it's always about what you keep. So if we can get control of our spending, we're going to be able to avoid racking up debt. We're going to be able to handle life's curveballs. Quick, give me a high five if you've had an unexpected expense come to you recently in the last 6 months that you weren't expecting, that was more than £250. Just give us a thumbs up if that's happened to you. If you've had an expense that you weren't expecting that cost you more than £250. And also being able to cope with those curveballs is key. And also, here's the thing about controlling spending is you want to be able to afford the little luxuries, right? This is not about living on cheese and crackers. This is about having luxuries without guilt. If anyone there likes having fun and having luxuries and doesn't want to feel guilt and shame about it, then this is for you. And you want to be able to pay off debt really quickly, okay? And that comes from a spending plan, but you want to have fun as well. Now, I asked at one of my events on Monday, I had a live event on Monday, and I asked people how they handled controlling their day-to-day spending. So there were 4 choices. There was, I have a detailed budget and I follow it closely. I have a detailed budget and I follow it loosely. I have a rough budget and I follow it loosely. Or I have no budget and no idea where my money goes. So if you feel like you want to put a number in, you can put 1, 2, 3 or 4. 1, I have a detailed budget and follow it closely. 2, I have a detailed budget and I follow it loosely. 3, I have a rough budget and I follow it loosely. Or 4, I have no budget and no idea where my money goes. If you're up for it, if you want to do a bit of disclosure, that's fine. I have been all of those things over the years. So there's no shame here, right? And I've got the scars on my back to prove it. So hopefully you can avoid a lot of those. Thank you, Mabel's Gold. 1, very good. Yeah, Bouncy, thank you for 2. 1, very good. We got some real organised people. A detailed budget and you follow it closely. I'm impressed. I was hoping to have some people who are 3 and 4, but never mind. It's no problem. I was certainly in my 20s. I was a 4, right? Money came in, money went out. There was no idea of any kind of constraints or a framework. I was the original train wreck from hell. So in my early 20s, it was literally, let's get through the money as quick as we can because life is for living. I could be dead tomorrow. That was my attitude, right? Unbelievable. So you guys are already well ahead of where I was. So there's a lot of research, okay, that shows that most people know they should have some kind of budget. But it also shows that most of them find it hard to stick to one. So you can have a budget and you can follow it closely, but you can still find you've got problems. And the reason is because budgeting and controlling day-to-day spending is not a natural thing that comes naturally to people. That's because we make money decisions on an emotional level, not logical, and also there's lots of temptation out there, isn't there? I'm only one after Mabel's gone. I'm only one after. Oh, okay. So you didn't start out on 1. You've moved on from 1. Mabel's Gold. Yeah. So I'm pleased to see that. Yeah. So you're like me. You learnt the hard way. And there's no shame in that. Hello, MSOX4, yeah. Hi, good to see you again. There's no shame there in moving up and saying that you've had a situation before in the past, because at the end of the day, that's life, right? We learn from our failures. And that's another thing. Learning to control spending is not about having no mistakes. It's not about not having detours, and it's not a straitjacket, okay? But learning to control your money is a skill that can be learned. Now let me make this really clear. This is a skill. This is a lifelong skill. Safe journey, yeah. Learn the hard way, I know. You were a 4, okay, Afro Girl. Saving to buy a house makes you a 2. Good, well done. But the point is we all learn, don't we? So a lot of us learn the hard way, but some of us can learn from other people. And as far as I'm concerned, I think there's some things here that we can share that help you understand how to be even better at this. So let's talk about why most budgets don't work. And even if you've got this covered, you potentially could share some of these insights together with your own experience with people you know, because this is always about sharing the knowledge with other people. No one has a monopoly on ideas, but at 51 years of age, I think I've got more scars than many people, certainly when it comes to money. So let's talk about the let's talk about the 4 reasons why budgets don't work. First of all, lack of attention. We don't give it enough time, effort and attention. We're more worried about binge watching on Netflix, or we're more worried about booking our holiday when we can do that. Or we're more worried about looking for a new jumper or something to buy. We don't give it that time. But here's the thing. If you can get some return on your time by saving money or not wasting it, that's the same as earning money. Think about that. If you don't earn £200 an hour, but spending an hour of your time, even if it was each week, and it yielded you £100 or £200, that's a good return, right? Ignorance. the other thing here is not knowing where their money is currently going. So let me give you a story. I'm having a house built. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can look at one of the playlists there called the Self-Build series. And so I've been building this house in my garden for the last 3 or 4 months, and we had some plasterers in last week. Now, plasterers are notorious sort of people in the sense that they tend to work very hard, they get paid quite well, but they do sort of live for the moment. Anyway, this guy was talking to me. I like to have a chat with people. Hi, the Jura Society, thanks for joining. And I said to him about, I'm just going off to do a webinar. This was last week, as I do, to teach people about controlling spending, budgeting. And I mentioned to him that I have quite low costs because I don't have any debt. And I said to him how much my monthly expenses were. And he said to me, God, that's a hell of a lot. I don't spend anything like that, and I've got a mortgage, he said. I said, oh yeah, really? He said, yeah. He said, my expenses are about £1,500 a month. I said, really? You've got a mortgage, you've got children. Okay, that's great. So do you have a car on finance? Well, yeah, but that's for my business. Okay, how much is that? That's £300 a month. Okay. But do you go on holiday? You just told me you've come back from Tenerife. You had a week 2 weeks ago in Tenerife. What, did they give you that free? He said, well, no, that was about 1,500, 1,600 quid. Okay, but is that the only holiday you have? He said, no, I have a holiday in the summer. Okay, well, how much is that? He said, well, that's about £4,000. I say you're spending about £6,000 on holidays, so that's £500 a month, right? So I've already found nearly £800 a month on top of your £1,500 a month. You're now up to £2,350. Do you have any pets? Well, yeah. Does your car need servicing? Well, yeah. Do your kids need clothes every now and again? Well, yeah. What about Christmas? You going to be buying anyone any presents? Yeah. So here's the thing, is that he's got no real... He thinks his expenses... Give me a thumbs up or a like that if you want. If you agree with me that most people think that their expenses is their direct debits and standing orders. They forget all the irregular but obvious stuff that's going to come along that's lumpy. And we're not even talking about buying coffees and sandwiches out or eating out at all. So this is the reality. You've got to get really clear and stop being ignorant about it. Sorry, I'm not saying you're ignorant. Thanks, bouncy feet. I'm not saying you're ignorant, but what I mean is you've got to get the truth, your truth, and get the real truth. Because when you know exactly what you're spending, I mean, I even have, and it's not just that, yes, that's right, it's not just the large one-off, it's also the smaller one-offs. Our dogs, Inca and Jet, we call them the geriatric colonel, that's Jet the collie, and Inca, who's the sort of loves lying around and eating. But every time they go to the vets, it costs us money, right? So you've got to allocate that. Take your annual cost of what you're going to spend and make a monthly allowance for it. The other thing is unrealistic expectations, right? Sinking funds, love it. Unrealistic expectations. So I am going to suddenly become brilliant at controlling my spending overnight. Now, if you've ever someone who has had the time off of doing good exercise and suddenly come back to it, you do not get your fitness back straight away, and you do not get financial fitness back, or you're not looking for perfection, you're looking for progress. So what we're looking for here is to have reasonable expectations. And I'm going to set you a little task that I want you to do at the end of today's live for next week, and I'll just come back to that, as I say, at the end. And then, as I say, the final thing is that people have no system. Now, we all kind of create our own little systems, don't we? Often shortcuts, things where we don't have to think too much, because we've got to make this easy. We've got to make it so it's so easy for us to do the right thing that we don't actually think about it. If you have to think about it, it's going to be harder for you to implement it, and more importantly, you're not going to stay with it. All right? Now, does anyone here remember I've mentioned before the smart spending system? You can go to my website, jason-butler.com, and download it from the tools section. There's a one-page graphic. That is my system. I'm not saying it's the only system, but it's my system where it shows you how to partition your spending based on the essential you, core living costs, the future you, which is debt repayment and wealth accumulation, and fun you, because you've got to have fun you. And then you augment that with a smoothing account. Or as, who was it before, said a sinking fund. Who was that? I can't remember. Someone said it was about a sinking fund. So yeah, you need a system. And I want also to give you permission to ban the B word. We are no longer going to be talking about budgets. Fair enough? We are going to be talking about smart spending plans,
or you can just call it a spending plan or your spending plan, because it's a plan for spending your money. It's not a budget. We are not accountants. We've all got probably spreadsheets, but none of us necessarily want to go to bed with one. So let's just talk about some practical things. Feel free to chuck your questions in the comments box and I'll try and answer them if I can. First thing, you've got to embrace everything, as I've said to you before. So that's that whole truth thing. All of the spending, everything, fun, irregular, lumpy stuff, even if you don't use it. And you need to tell every pound that you've got where you want it to go before you send it, right? So you've got to decide before the month, before you get paid, before money comes in, where it's going to go. Give me a thumbs up if you've heard of the concept of zero-based budgets. Anyone heard of the zero-based budget? Hang on, I've got someone here. Who's this? Sorry, someone's just trying to contact me. I don't know what that's all about. Anyone heard of zero-based budgets? Okay, so it's really simple. The money coming in must equal the money going out. If it doesn't, you have to reduce costs, you have to increase income, or you have to do a mixture of the two. Yeah, fair enough. So a zero-based budget means that we tell the money where it's going to go before we get paid. It's so simple, pretty straightforward. And what we've also got to do is look for quick wins in the budget that we've already got. So just think about things. You know, we all know that utility bills, mobile phones, everything like that is up for grabs. Everything you can possibly rebroke it. Life assurance. If you bought life assurance or income protection insurance or home insurance or car insurance, it's not always about the price, because I chose to do my car renewal insurance this year with Aviva. They weren't the cheapest, but they are brilliant at paying out. Their service is superb, and I don't have to read the small print. So sometimes it's not about cutting, it's about knowing that the money you are spending, you are happy to spend. It's as much when you're running your spending plan to feel good about the money that you've hang on, sorry, someone's just sending me a request here. No, hang on, I can't go live with that just yet. So it's just as well to be good about the money you are spending. And here's a little tip. Assuming you don't have a large balance that you haven't cleared, get rid of credit cards and perhaps ask to replace your debit card with a new one. And do you know what it'll do? It will flush out all those little subscriptions and all those little things you signed up for £4 and £10 and something once a year. And I did that recently. Not only did I get rid of my credit cards completely, I've got rid of them. They're no longer in my life because I just want to simplify. I want to see the money going out, so I feel the pain of money going out. But I also wanted to flush out all these little tiny bits of software and something I thought was a great app, and it's all flushed out, you know, a good few £100. Now, it's not a lot of money, a couple of £100, but it's a couple of £100 that I can use to take my wife out for a meal when the restaurants finally reopen, right? So here's the thing. Replace your debit cards, replace your credit cards, or close your credit cards, because it will flush out all those little bits of spending. You could always change your bank account, of course. That will definitely flush out lots of spending, but that's a rather drastic thing. And here's another thing is to be patient and realistic about what you can achieve. I mentioned that before. Patience and pragmatism. So a spending plan is not a straitjacket. Fair enough? A spending plan is just your intention of where you want the money to go. And we talked about not being unrealistic, is make reasonable provision. So if you spend £200 a month on Amazon, like we seem to have about £200 a month goes out on what I call bits and bobs from Amazon. It could be a table fan. It could be a couple of books. It could be some mascara. Whatever it is, I call it the Amazon Bits and Bobs Fund. And one month it's $220, another month it's $160, one month it was $300. But on average, it's about $200, right? So one of the ways to get the real true reality is to look at the past and not just say that that's going to happen in the future. Say, are you happy with that? So spending is always about priorities. Now, I'm just interested here if anyone who is really into controlling their spending, and bear in mind we call spending plan, not budgeting. We call this spending plan, not budgeting. I'm wondering if any of you have ever come a cropper with a partner about spending, because in my experience, where there is tension and conflict in relationships is because you're not on the same page with your spending priorities.
whether it's small little things or whether it's big things. So you might want to actually spend a lot more money on funding a house. Your partner might want to spend a lot more money doing fun stuff, okay? And I've seen that cause tension in relationships. So again, being pragmatic about all this, this is a framework, not a straitjacket, and we're going to be pragmatic and we're going to take time to get this right. And we're going to keep on making course corrections. And here's the thing, you're going to make mistakes. You are going to have some months where you have a blowout, but that doesn't mean you failed. That doesn't mean you're a loser. What it means is it just that month, it's not quite worked yet. I'm single at the moment, yeah, thank God. So here's the thing, is that some months when things go wrong, that does not mean you are a failure or a bad person. I'll say that again. Making mistakes or having setbacks or not following what you intended to doesn't mean that you are a bad person. So there we go. So that's the point I want to make there. So there's going to be your current reality and there's going to be ideal. And here's the thing, your ideal you will never get to. You never ever get there. That's the bad news. The good news is you don't need to. All you need to do is be going in the right direction, just moving in the right direction. So let's kind of summarise this and just really be clear. We are talking about being intentional about where we want to spend our money. This is not about going without or living like a monk, unless of course you haven't got any emergency savings and you've got lots of non-mortgage debt, in which case you've got to get super focused and you've got to live like a monk for a bit or a nun and spend nothing until you get ahead. It's also something that all people have, and I've got ahead financially and I have a spending budget and I love my spending plan. So I love that because it gives me freedom. And here's another thing, is that financial freedom doesn't come from having loads and loads of assets and passive income, although it can help. It comes from you feeling in control of all of your day-to-day spending, and that anything that comes as a curveball or any variation that you can cope with, that you can just throw it off, okay? And here's the thing, if you keep your lifestyle costs lower and keep them growing lower than your income capability, then you're naturally going to build wealth. You're naturally going to be building resilience. But it is important to include in your spending plan, when you've come out of survival mode, if you've come out of like traumatic, debt and no savings, and you've got yourself a little bit of savings and you've got all the expensive debt out of the way, then it's okay to have fun. So you really must include fun in your budget and do it without guilt. And then the other thing, of course, to bear in mind is to talk to other people about spending priorities, what they're doing, what's working for them. Tell them what's working for you. Because here's the thing, peer pressure, and I know it's a bit different in this COVID year, but this kind of come out for a drink, go to here, will you come to a stag do, a hen do, these things can blow you off course. You've got to keep reaffirming what is important to you. Your spending plan, and more importantly, your bank account that the money's coming from, really is the evidence of what you value and what you want in life and what you will or won't put up with. This is a good question. How do you define a good budget for fun? I define a good budget for fun, one, that you can afford. That's the first one. And secondly, the fun thing you spend it on gives you the most fun based on what you're into, okay? So you might well be into, I don't know, live music. I know this is difficult at the moment, so I'm trying to trying to adapt my normal thinking, but fun could be, I'm trying to think, fun for you could be, I don't know what it is, but whatever the budget is, it's got to be what you can afford. So let's say there are three phases with learning to control spending. There is what I call survival remedial phase, right, where you are in a real pickle. You've got no savings, you've got a load of old debt, non-mortgage debt, and you've got to really clean this mess up. That is bread. That's cheese and crackers. That is definitely cheese and crackers. That's going without. That is your monk or nun phase, as I call it, okay? That's the austere. That's your austerity. It isn't fun. So you just got to clear that mess up. However, I still think it's difficult to sustain that without a little bit of fun. So you might be able to eke out $5 a week for something. But when you've got through that survival or the remedial phase, you then get into a norming, a standard phase. I don't know, 5-10% of your spending can be on fun. But it depends. If your housing costs are quite high, say you live in London or you've just bought a house, your first house, or you're at the beginning of your career, your housing cost, your core cost, your essential cost might be quite high. So this idea of, there was the idea years ago of 50, 30, 20. Well, that is an interesting idea. 50 on your core costs, 30 on fun, and 20 on your future. But that doesn't really work for most people. So what you have to have is ranges. So somewhere between 30 to 65% on your core costs, somewhere between sort of 10 to 25 on your future you, and sort of 5 to 15% on fun, depending on what your other priorities are, where you are in your life. And this will change. And that's the other thing. Basically, you're going to have to update this based on your resources, based on where you are in life. And also, if you get money coming into you that you didn't expect, ignore it. Don't include it in the spending plan. What you've got to do is just assume it hasn't come in, but how you allocate it to your capital budget. Don't absorb it. I mean, perhaps absorb it. If you inherit, say, £10,000, nothing wrong with you spending £1,000, as long as you haven't got debt, non-mortgage debt, and you built some savings, and then just forget the rest. Just forget the rest. Put that into capital. I've got a question here from George D. How would you allocate a budget around pensions, ISAs, bank deposits? Well, if you go to my website, George, which is jason-butler.com, go to Tools and Resources, and there is the Smart Spending Plan. And I give you the ranges, and again, these are ranges, depending on your circumstances, for future you, for building pension and ISAs and building future wealth, building deposits for future properties and investments and what have you. It's probably going to be around 15 to 20%, depending on where you are. But if you're just starting out, it may be a bit less. And it may be you can't do any of that until you've got your debts cleared. And of course, debts, in this case, we also include things like swanky mobile phones that you didn't pay for on £80, £90 a month contracts. That's debt. So there we go. So look, here's the thing. Budgeting. We don't call it budgeting, we call it smart spending. There is a smart spending graphic there for you to have a look at. You've got to embrace all of your spending, including the ad hoc, whether it's core or whether it's fun. And here's the thing, you'll never stop doing this. And you should actually enjoy your spending, controlling your spending, because this is what gives you financial freedom now, regardless of what you earn, regardless of what you've built in terms of wealth, regardless of your age, and regardless of what you're spending your money on. So look, thank you very much for joining this week. If you've liked this, do come back. How can you help me? Please spread the word. Very happy. You can go to the website. You can tell people about my website. They can sign up for my newsletter. They can read my blogs. You can go and listen to my weekly podcast, which is Real Money Stories. And I give you some hints and tips at the beginning. And I always interview someone interesting. They're not always rock stars, but they are interesting people who share their money stories. And I get them to tell me their insights and what they've learned. So share the word, and if you really do want to help someone and look really good, go and buy the FT on Saturday, because I have a regular money and emotions, all about the emotions and psychology of money. I have an article that appears there every 2 or 3 weeks. So go and buy this Saturday's edition, and it's all about making money, enjoying money by giving it away. And so there we go. If you know someone who's got a few quid that you might think they might want to give you, give them that article, and it might just inspire them to give you an early inheritance. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.